You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. Let's go to Terrence Clarke. He's a spokesman for the Warnock for Georgia campaign. Terrence, welcome to Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hey, how y'all doing today?
Doing great. This is a Washington Post story here. Janine Eveler, who is the Cobb County Elections Director, she says she simply doesn't have enough trained staff in order to handle these number of polling locations. Quote, we lost several of our advanced voting managers and assistant managers due to the holidays, the workload, and the pandemic. She said the remaining team members who agreed to work would do so only if the hours were less onerous. We are at the end of the election cycle, and many are tired or just unwilling to work so hard, especially during this time of year. Then she says that the workers are, now this was interesting here. She said that the workers are seasonal employees hired and trained for statewide elections. Many of them were not willing to work 14-hour days for 6 days a week for 3 weeks. Now, here's what I just sort of interesting about this, Terrence. My parents are 73 years old. They work the polls. These are paid jobs.
Right.
So these are not non-paid jobs. These are actually paid jobs. My experience with people who work elections is that they are seasonal, and so they work those jobs. Are y'all buying this?
Thank you for having me on here again, Roland. I definitely appreciate it. And I can't speak to what the county official was talking about, but I know that with the interest that's in this race, there's so many people out here ready and willing to help work and secure our elections. You have folks like Fair Fight, ACLU, NAACP, the party, doing all types of amazing work. You can find some people to work these polls. And Reverend Warnock and John Ossoff not only put out a statement yesterday highlighting, why we need to expand access to the ballot, how important this election is, and how we quite frankly just believe in our heart that there are enough people out there willing and ready to do the work. And we'll continue raising that flag. I think that, they need the help. There's a number of people out there willing to do it. And we've been fighting for voting rights. Reverend Warnock has been fighting for voting rights for years. And I think that a number of people are a little bit suspicious about the intentions behind it. So we're to continue trying to encourage people to go out there, early vote, absentee ballot vote, do what you can, because we see that there are clearly intentions by people on the other side potentially to limit who has access and where they can vote.
537,000 people voted early for the November 3rd race there in Cobb County. What's interesting is that Cobb County experienced, some people had wait times of 5 to 10 hours. So now, by shrinking in half, you are about to exacerbate those wait times.
Right. And I'll tell you from my own personal experience. So I live on the south side. I'm in a place called Henry County, another suburban areas that's gone from Republican to Democrat, because you have precisely candidates like Reverend Warnock, John Ossoff, Stacey Abrams, who are clearly appealing to a growing electorate. It took me 5.5 hours to vote, and they had all types of machines in that place. So I think that, again, we are trying to expand access wherever we can. That's why we're encouraging people to let them know that it is safe to get your absentee ballot, drop it in the drop box. If you don't want to have to wait in those long wait times, if you don't want to have to be in those lines, potentially risking your safety, during COVID, it makes no sense to limit access in the middle of a pandemic, right? And so you have to ask yourself, what is the intention behind it? And I think we'll continue to do what we can, like I said, to make sure people recognize that early vote starts on the 14th. Try to get your vote out there. We have so much on the ballot right now, from expanding healthcare to climate change to voting rights in and of themselves. It just seems illogical. You wouldn't do this in a regular year, but we want to do it in the middle of a pandemic. It's a lot of questions, I think, left to be answered there.
And again, so we'll certainly see that the folks are sort of waiting on that. Terrence Clarke, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate you.
For the really thing, in a moment, we're going to talk with Cliff Albright. He is the co-founder of Black Voters Matter. I'm going to go back to my panel here. And Candace, again, I'm always talking about on this show how you have to connect the dots, how you have to understand that decision by the Supreme Court opened the door for massive voter suppression. Thousands of polling locations in the South have closed since the Shelby v. Holder decision. Most of your voter ID laws put in place after the Shelby v. Holder decision. All of these voter suppression tactics all came after the Shelby v. Holder decision. By also connecting the dots, of course, massive turnout for Obama in 2008. Then folks don't come back. Listen to me clearly, people who are listening. People don't come back and vote in the 2010 midterms. Republicans flip 16 state legislatures. That's why today they control 30 or more, I think it's 31, governor's mansions and legislatures in the United States. And so they then were able to put these laws into place because, and that's how political gerrymandering, because the gerrymandering came in after the 2010 election because that was tied to the census. And so all these things are combined. And so the reason why this race and why Republicans, they get it in Cobb County is so important because they know that if Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock candidates, if they beat Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, Democrats will have a 50-50 tie. Kamala Harris can break the tie, and they can actually pass a bill to restore what was taken, what was denied in that Shelby v. Holder decision. That's why so much is on the line here if Ossoff and Warnock are able to win.
Absolutely. And you've connected the dots so well. And I think that one important thing that really kind of was the tipping point was what happened with Stacey Abrams. This really woke people up. And that's a big dot in the whole trajectory that you're talking about. People really had their eyes open. And then she put work in, got 1 million people registered, right? We had a lot of people that were surrounded, that got around and made that happen. Also connecting the dots, we have to look at what could potentially happen in the future in terms of what the Supreme Court looks like now, because we know that it's not going to happen there. So we definitely need to look at Congress. As you said, if it's a 50-50 tie, then we've got Kamala Harris to break that tie. So there is a little bit of hope there, but people have become more awakened. We were asleep. A lot of folks were asleep over the years. As you said, these midterm elections, people generally don't think about them. Now, 7 o'clock on CNN, we're sitting at home on a Sunday night watching people down in Georgia because it's just that important and all eyes are on Georgia. I think that people have gotten the message, not only for this election, but for more midterm elections to come and in the future. I think people have finally become awakened.
The reason I keep using that phrase, Michael, connecting the dots, is because our people need to understand. Look at what happened in North Carolina when Democrats were able to gain control of the North Carolina Supreme Court. That's why voting also matters, because guess what? You've got the sister there, Sherry Beasley, who is down 400 votes from being the Chief Justice, which means that Democrats could have had a much larger lead. Now that's going to shrink. That is important because she then determines what is called up. That matters also because, again, for the folks, when they say if voting doesn't matter, if 500 more people voted in North Carolina, she is Chief Justice. That's how they were able to strike down a voter ID there in North Carolina. That's how they were to strike down racial gerrymandering. And so we have to understand all of these things are interlocking, and how not voting can determine who does win. And then who wins then determines who controls the legislature. Who controls the legislature then determines what laws are passed. And then who wins on the county level determines who controls the elections board, which then controls polling sites. All of these things go together.
Absolutely, Roland. Not only does it all go together, but my degree is in business administration. So when we talk about economic empowerment and building black businesses, in 2016, you had, people saying we don't need to vote. We just need to do economic empowerment and, build businesses, things like that. And I said, that's good. I'm all for that. I've done that. but you also need to elect a president whose economic policies are going to protect the economy that your black-owned business depends upon to survive. You also need to elect a House of Representatives and a U.S. Senate that are going to pass laws that protect the economy and are beneficial to your black-owned business, to your family, to your communities, et cetera. So this is all connected. Everything from criminal justice reform to relieving student loan debt to the education department, environmental protection agency. So this is all connected. Then when we look at federal judges, because see, in 2016, one of the ways that the Republicans were able to get people to come out and vote against their own interests and vote for Trump was they said this is about the courts, the federal court and the Supreme Court. So Trump has gotten, I think it's 225 federal judges now confirmed. Okay, and pushed through the Senate, and a lot of these nominations are coming from the Federalist Society and the Heritage Foundation. The Federalist Society and the Heritage Foundation. The year 2043 is what has a lot of these white people scared. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And they know that by 2043, they will no longer be the majority population in this country. So they want to control the federal courts for the next 25, 50, 35, 40 years. Okay, so this is why even after they didn't pass a coronavirus bill in the Senate, they're still ramming through these unqualified federal judges. This is one of the biggest white affirmative action programs I've ever seen. Go ahead, brother. These are unqualified people. Go ahead.
And Rena, I'm going to bring in Cliff Albright just 1 second here. But again, when we talk about how it's all interrelated, this is why we often on this show constantly say you cannot ignore city elections, school board elections, county elections, state elections, federal elections, because what happens in this state election could impact what happens in this county election. What happens in this county election now impacts early voting locations. And so everything is not about the president or U.S. Senate or congressional races.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Roland, I think back to what's interrelated when you mention that word. By and large, we are a nation made up largely of people that do not want to be inconvenienced. And by virtue of being people who do not want to be inconvenienced, we have fractured ourselves as a society. And that has led to us caring less and less about what happens to our neighbors. So the neighbors that don't look like us, don't think like us, ideologically, ethnically, racially, we are so divided because we have figured out that to be less inconvenienced, we can just shut off caring. We don't have to show up to certain things. We have to care about certain things. So our value system is where all this really comes down to. What is in our value system? I think about myself, for example, often when I compare myself to, say, cousins of Indian ancestry and who are the daughter or sons of immigrants like my parents. And so I think about that. And I think that it actually started at home for me. My dad got me really civically involved, got me caring about what happened in our government, not just because of my family's origin story, but literally because it was something that he weaved into our nightly dinner conversations. And he made time on the weekends to take me to an NPR event, for example. I learned what National Public Radio was at a very young age. And so it became ingrained in my family's value system. And therefore, it became something that was just natural to me when I was 18. Now, registering as a Republican was not something I don't think my father was very proud of, but he was glad that I cared so much. And I think that is the thing we do. And we have to talk about as a nation moving forward, particularly this next year after this new administration comes into power. We really have got to figure out, how do we get people to care? How do we get people to show up? And how do we make it a part of our family value system that voting, civic engagement, these things are paramount to having this society, however you see it, having the American society that we all want, that we all can thrive in. Until then, it's just going to be an every 4 years game. One thing, though, I want to share with our audience a stat that actually did help me feel more encouraged about the situation in Georgia, for example. This one stat really stuck out to me, and it was the number of eligible but unregistered Georgians. In 2016, it was 22%. Guess what? It fell. And in 2020, it was 2%. That's encouraging. That number is encouraging. That tells you people are showing up. They're figuring out something matters. I should show up. I should care. I should be a part of a change. Because this is something that has had to take a multi-pronged effort from outside forces. Yep. But we can do it right by making it right in our families first.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends, go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.